the MD2 issue. That self-signature has no reason to be there, but ultimately it provides the RSA signature across that MD2 hash. If we could create something else with that MD2 hash, like, for example, a God-level intermediate certificate, we would generate that God-level intermediate certificate, we would give it the MD2 hash of the root, we would take the signature from the root, the self-signature that has no reason to be there, no purpose, we will give it a purpose. We will shift that signature down. It will validate, it will sign, it will work. Eventually. We do not actually have an MD2 pre-image attack yet. In 2004, the attack I just described would operate with a complexity of 2 to the 104. Not going to happen. 2005, 2 to the 97. In 2008, we were down to 2 to the 73. Now, our largest known computational efforts have been at around 2 to the 63 complexity. I'd like to show you guys a bit of a graph. I think I know where this is going. So, we got two options. We can wait until we get completely owned, or perhaps, for the first time in cryptographic history, we can fix something before it blows up in our face. Would you believe it? They actually agreed. OpenSSL's like, screw MD2, we don't need that crap. It's out of OpenSSL. Firefox has it out of Firefox 3.5. It'll be killed in 3.0 shortly. Red Hat's already shipped the new NSS, their new crypto library. VeriSign is reissuing a new self-signed certificate, but now self-signed with SHA-1, because it really apparently does need to be self-signed with something. Opera's waiting on VeriSign. Apple, Microsoft are working on it. Google's working on it. GNU TLS realized years ago they didn't want anything to do with this crap and disabled it. Awesome. How awesome would it have been if we had done this in 1996 and killed MD5 then? So, when I say this is going to blow up in our face, I'm not actually kidding, right? Because this particular certificate, if you look in the Internet Explorer certificate store, yeah, that's client authentication. So, SSL isn't just used to authenticate a server to a client. On very high security sites, it will authenticate a client to a server. This MD2 root will authenticate clients to very sensitive servers. So I bet you might think, well, no one would possibly have that enabled, like actually working. No, if you actually connect to an SSL server, it's very helpful. If it supports client authentication, it'll tell you. It'll even give you a nicely formatted list of roots that it'll accept. And if you actually go, you'll see by default Class 3 Public Primary Certificate Authority on any IIS install that is supporting client authentication. So the bad guy takes their God-level cert and just says, yeah, I want to log in. I'll be this guy. Cool. So this actually was not a trait that we had with the MD5 root that Stevens and Soderov popped. So I do want to be a little bit fair. This wasn't just VeriSign's problem. Quite a few companies were signing with MD2 up until about 2000, 2001. Now, the fact that these things expired, 8 years ago, that doesn't matter, because if you can spoof the hash, you can actually change the expiration date. It's very nice like that. But it does matter that most of these MD2 certificates are off the internet today. I did find a couple. Not actually true, there's one. There's a couple. I think nobody in this room is going to understand why this is hilarious. But if you do understand why this is hilarious, come up and grab a swig. Anyone understand why Rubicon would be awesome? Rubicon was an American con. It ranks as the only hacker con in history where the entire attendance was let out with their hands on the back of their heads. And this was actually, one of the few MD2 certs in around. So, did this need to be fixed immediately? What is it with a couple people not patching it? relax. I actually went over to Leuven in Belgium, talked to Bart Pernille. He's Len Sassman's advisor, Len being one of the co-researchers on this. And the guy's like, wow, MD2 hacks would actually be useful? Oh, well, we probably won't see one in the next 6 months in terms of effective attacks. So it's bad, but you've got a couple months. So please do not crack the shit out of MD2 in the next 6 months. Thank you. Being said, it'd be a totally offline attack. We wouldn't be able to tell. So what about existing CAs? I mean, the MD2 stuff hasn't been used in years, right? Is there any way to bypass present-day CA operations? Yeah, but first you got to drink. All right, so this talk came out of, anyone here know Meredith Patterson? This talk came out of her saying, I'm going to go home and see just what kind of crap I can put in a certificate. And I'm like, that is a terrifyingly good idea. There are two kinds of vulnerabilities, ultimately. There's vulnerabilities that cause the system to misuse memory. These would be your traditional exploits. And there's vulnerabilities that cause the system to see a different message than was intended. These are a softer form of vulnerability. These are semantic exploits. You've given a valid message, but it is read differently by different systems. Now, what I need you guys to understand for a moment is that certificate authorities and browsers talk to each other. Basically, a browser goes to www.foo.com, and it has no idea what public key it sees. So it says, effectively as mediated through certificates, hey, CA, is this actually the public key of www.foo.com? And the CA either says yes or no. This is all done with signatures and whatnot, but that's actually the communication that's happening. Now, how do you know that a certificate authority is actually saying something? You know, if the certificate authority thinks it's sending one message and the browser sees that it's reading another, would that not be a vulnerability? And the answer is yes. And the fact that we're still seeing this crap, in 2009, comes back to the fact that we're just not very good at writing parsers. At the end of the day, language is hard. It has to be done a little more formally than we've been doing it. What I'm about to show you is a bunch of evidence of kind of half-assed parser design. At 11 a.m. tomorrow in one of the rooms, there will be a description of full-assed parser design. I don't know which room, but go find it. Len and Meredith are doing it. Do we know what room, actually?
Actually, I got an email this morning. They canceled. They couldn't come here. One was sick and the other was stuck in New York.
Never mind. Meredith is not actually going to be able to talk tomorrow. That sucks. Damn, because they actually had cool stuff and they were responsible for some of this work. But let's actually walk through the certificate authority pipeline here. The user generates a public and private key, submits what's called an x509 subject name with a public key in the certificate signing request. There's only one element in that actually matters, and that is what's called the common name. So there's all this other crap based off of a system that was theorized would someday exist and never did. The only thing that is actually validated is the DNS name, www.foo.com, which goes in a field called common name. If the certificate authority approves of the common name in a certificate signing request, meaning it actually does the whole DNS thing and it validates that, yes, okay, I can trust this person, it has two options. It has the secure option of extracting the